The first mobile phone weighed more than a brick, took 10 hours to charge, gave you 30 minutes of talk time, and only 1% of the world could use it. Today, your phone fits in your pocket, connects you to billions of people, knows your face, tracks your health, translates languages in real time, and is slowly turning into something very different from a phone. So how did we get from a plastic slab made for phone calls to an always-on AI companion that follows you everywhere? This is the complete evolution of phones, from bricks to brains. Let's start in 1973. That's when the first real mobile phone call was made. The device was massive, heavy, and completely impractical by today's standards. It wasn't designed for consumers, it was designed to prove a point. Communication didn't have to be tied to a place, and that idea alone was revolutionary. For decades before that, phones were fixed. They lived on walls and desks. You went to the phone didn't come with you. So the first era of phones wasn't about convenience or features, it was about freedom. In the 1980s, mobile phones slowly entered the public world. They were huge, expensive, and mostly used by business executives and governments. Carrying one wasn't subtle, it was a statement. If you had a mobile phone, you wanted people to see it. Battery life was terrible, coverage was limited, calls dropped constantly. But none of that mattered, because for the first time you could be reached anywhere, and that changed how people thought about availability forever. Then came the 1990s. Phones stopped being experiments and started becoming products. Phones began shrinking, antennas got shorter, batteries improved, screens appeared, and for the first time, phones weren't just about calling anymore. You could store contacts, you could send messages, you could play simple games. This is where the phone quietly changed society. Text messaging didn't feel revolutionary at first, but it rewired communication. Messages became short, fast, and asynchronous. You no longer needed someone's full attention to talk to them. You could leave a message and move on. And one brand dominated this era, Nokia. Nokia phones were everywhere. They were reliable, nearly indestructible, and simple. The battery lasted for days. The interface was straightforward. The phones worked. For millions of people, this was their first personal piece of technology, something that was always with them. Phones weren't smart yet, but they were personal. Then, in the early 2000s, the first real attempt to turn phones into mini computers. Phones gained color screens. Cameras appeared, terrible by today's standards, but magical at the time. You could browse basic websites. You could download ringtones. You could install simple apps. BlackBerry became the king of productivity. It was not cool, it was not fun, but it was powerful. Email in your pocket changed how work functioned. Suddenly, being away from the office did not really exist anymore. And that was both impressive and dangerous, because phones were becoming more capable, they were also becoming more complicated. Menus got deeper, buttons multiplied, styluses appeared, and every brand had its own idea of what a smartphone should be. Then, in 2007, everything snapped into place. The iPhone didn't invent the smartphone, but it redefined it. Instead of buttons, it gave you a screen. Instead of menus, it gave you touch. Instead of a phone with features, it felt like a computer that happened to make calls. The biggest shift wasn't hardware, it was philosophy. Your phone stopped being a tool you learned. It started being something you interacted with intuitively. Swipe, tap, pinch. The interface disappeared and suddenly anyone could use it. And once that happened, the phone stopped being a device for specific tasks and became a platform. Apps changed everything. Instead of one company deciding what your phone could do, developers all over the world could build on top of it. Phones became cameras, game consoles, GPS units, music players, wallets, and social hubs all at once. And in the process, phones absorbed entire industries. Cameras declined, MP3 players vanished, GPS devices disappeared, alarm clocks, calculators, flashlights, and notebooks were gone. The phone didn't just evolve, it consumed. By the early part of the decade, starting 2010, the smartphone was no longer optional. It was infrastructure. Screens got bigger, the internet got faster, cameras got shockingly good. Social media turned phones into portals for constant connection. Notifications became endless, and the phone quietly became the most used object in human history. At the same time, something else changed. Phones stopped being about innovation and started being about refinement. Year after year, devices got thinner, faster, brighter, but the shape stayed the same: a slab of glass, bigger screens, smaller bezels, fewer buttons, more sensors. Fingerprint scanners arrived, then face recognition. Phones learned who you were, where you were, and how you used them. They started adapting to you instead of the other way around. And then slowly, phones stopped being just smart. They started becoming aware. Voice assistants entered the picture. At first, they were awkward and unreliable, but they introduced a new idea. You do not have to touch your phone to use it. You can talk to it. At the same time, machine learning began shaping everything behind the scenes. Your phone learned which photos mattered, which notifications to show, which words you might type next, and which apps you were likely to open. The intelligence was not obvious, but it was constant. By the early 2020s, phones had reached a strange moment. They were incredibly powerful, in many ways more powerful than laptops from just a few years earlier. But the form had not changed. People began asking a new question. If phones are this smart, why do they still feel the same? That question opened the door to the next evolution. Foldable phones tried to break the slab. Multiple screens appeared. New shapes experimented with how much display you could carry. Some failed, some survived, but they all pointed to the same truth. The phone's physical form was no longer keeping up with its intelligence. And now we reach the current era, the shift from smartphones to something more subtle and more powerful. AI modern phones are not just fast, they are predictive. They summarize messages, edit photos automatically, remove objects, enhance voices, translate conversations live, generate text, suggest responses, anticipate needs. Your phone is no longer waiting for commands, it is watching patterns. And this is where the word phone starts to break down, because calling is no longer the main function. For many people, it is barely used at all. Messaging, media, navigation, payments, health tracking, identity verification. These are the core uses now. The phone has become an extension of your mind, and the next step is not more apps or bigger screens. It is companionship. Phones are starting to behave less like tools and more like assistants that understand context. They remember preferences, they adapt tone, they assist with thinking, writing, planning, and decision-making. They are moving from smartphone to AI companion, not a robot, not a personality in a movie sense, but a constant presence that helps you think, organize, and interact with the world. And that raises a bigger question. If your phone knows your habits, your schedule, your location, your relationships, your health, and your goals, is it still just a device? Or is it becoming something closer to a digital extension of you? We have gone from phones that could not leave a wall to phones that never leave us, from devices that connected voices to systems that shape behavior, from bricks to brains. And here's the most surprising part of the entire evolution. We still call them phones, but making calls is now one of the least important things they do. The evolution of phones is not really about hardware anymore. It is about autonomy. The future phone may not look radically different. It may not even feel revolutionary at first, but it will do something quietly powerful. It will reduce friction between thought and action. And when that happens, the phone stops being a tool you use and becomes a partner you rely on. That is not just the evolution of phones. That is the evolution of how humans and machines think together. If you want more evolution of things, where everyday technology slowly turns into something much bigger, subscribe. Comment what evolution you want next.